What is logic, structure, and argument? A complete guide to thinking clearly. Part 1. Logic. What logic actually is. Logic is not some abstract academic concept floating in the philosophical ether. Logic is the structure of reality and the method by which humans access that structure. 3 integrated dimensions. 1. Structural logic, reality's organization. Reality has inherent patterns, causation, physical laws, spatial relationships. Objects have properties and consistent behaviors. Events follow cause-effect sequences. This organization exists independent of human observation. 2. Rhetorical logic, communication structure. The compression of reality's structures into articulable language. Rules governing coherent versus incoherent communication. Grammar, syntax, semantic relationships. The mechanism for transferring knowledge between minds. 3. Empirical logic, verification method. Testing claims against observable reality through sensory experience. Determining what exists versus what does not exist. Falsifiability and experimental validation. The reality check that separates truth from fiction. Why logic is non-negotiable. You cannot access reality without logic. Your sensory organs don't just passively receive data, they structure chaotic input into processable patterns. Your eyes organize electromagnetic radiation into shapes, colors, edges. Your ears structure air pressure variations into discrete sounds. Your brain then computes these structured inputs, identifying relationships, detecting patterns, building predictive models. This computational process is logical reasoning. Without logic, you have no coherent perception, just raw sensory chaos. No comprehensible thought, just neural noise. No communication, just random vocalizations. No knowledge, just disconnected experiences. No ability to distinguish true from false. Logic is not optional. It is definitional to cognition itself. The dual test, rhetoric and empiricism. For any claim to qualify as valid knowledge, it must pass both tests. Test 1, rhetorical coherence. Can the claim be articulated in structured, comprehensible language? Does it maintain internal consistency, no self-contradictions? Can another mind process and evaluate the claim? Is it distinguishable from noise? Test 2, empirical validity. Can the claim be tested through observation or experiment? Does it correspond to observable reality? Is it falsifiable? Can evidence potentially disprove it? When tested, does it compute to true or false? Critical principle. Both tests must pass. Failure at either gate endures invalid knowledge. The 4 categories of claims. Claim type, rhetorical, empirical status. Example, valid knowledge, coherent verified, logical, water boils at 100 degrees 6 at sea level. False claims, coherent falsified, invalid, the sky is green, unfalsifiable, coherent untestable, useless. Invisible undetectable dragons exist. Incoherent noise, gibberish cannot test noise. Colorless green ideas sleep furiously. Only category 1 qualifies as knowledge. Everything else is speculation, falsehood, or gibberish. Common misunderstandings about logic. Logic is cold and emotionless. Wrong. Logic is simply structure. Emotions have logical structure. Neurochemical patterns, behavioral correlates. Causal relationships. Emotions are not beyond logic, they're just complex structures we're still mapping. Some truths transcend logic. If something is true, it has structure. Otherwise, it's indistinguishable from nothing. If it has structure, it's accessible to logical analysis. Transcends logic usually means, I can't articulate it yet, or, I want to believe it without evidence. Logic doesn't apply to subjective experience. Subjective experience has objective correlates, brain states, behavioral patterns. The experience is real and structured. Difficulty in articulation is a practical challenge, not evidence of mystical transcendence. Logic is just Western thinking. Causation operates everywhere. Structure exists everywhere. Coherent communication requires logic everywhere. This isn't cultural, it's reality-based. Different cultures may emphasize different aspects of logical reasoning, but the underlying requirements, coherence, testability, are universal. Part 2. Structure. What structure is? Structure is the organization of components into coherent patterns with definable relationships and predictable behaviors. Structure exists at every scale: social, individuals, to families, to communities, to societies; linguistic, phonemes to words, to sentences, to discourse; logical, premises to inference, to conclusions. Reality is not chaos. Reality is structured. If it weren't, knowledge would be impossible. Why structure matters. 1. Predictability through pattern recognition. Structure creates repeating patterns. Patterns enable prediction. Prediction enables successful action. Example: you touch a hot stove, experience pain, learn the pattern: heat plus skin contact, shuachin, pain. This structural relationship allows you to predict future outcomes and avoid harm. Without structure, every experience would be novel and unpredictable. You couldn't learn, you couldn't plan, you'd be helpless. 2. Accessibility through organization. Your mind can only process organized information. Unstructured data, noise, static on a TV, random numbers, incoherent speech. Structured data, signal, image on screen, mathematical sequences, coherent sentences. Structure is the difference between JDHFGSKDF and "this sentence conveys meaning." 3. Communication through compression. Complex structures can be compressed into transmittable formats. Example: DNA is a compressed instruction set for building organisms. The entire blueprint for a human is encoded in 3 billion base pairs, compressed enough to fit in a microscopic cell nucleus, yet containing enough structured information to specify trillions of cells with differentiated functions. Language does the same for ideas. It compresses reality's complexity into articulable formats that other minds can decompress and reconstruct. Hierarchical structure. Most complex systems are hierarchically organized. Simpler components combine to form more complex structures, which combine to form even more complex structures. Example: this essay level 1, individual letters, A, B, C. Level 2, letters combine into words, logic, structure, argument. Level 3, words combine into sentences, conveying propositions. Level 4, sentences combine into paragraphs, developing ideas. Level 5, paragraphs combine into sections, complete arguments. Level 6, sections combine into the complete essay, comprehensive framework. Understanding requires operating at the appropriate hierarchical level. Analyzing individual letters misses the meaning, too granular. Vaguely grasping the whole thing without understanding component relationships loses precision, too abstract. You must identify the relevant structural level for the question being asked. Relevance and context. Relevance: what information is necessary for understanding at this structural level? Context: what is the purpose of this explanation? Example: explaining how a car works. To a driver: steering wheel controls, direction. Gas pedal controls, speed. Brake pedal stops the vehicle. Irrelevant: internal combustion mechanics, transmission gear ratios, fuel injection timing. To a mechanic: engine components and their interactions, diagnostic procedures for common failures, repair protocols. Irrelevant: marketing strategy of the manufacturer, aesthetic design philosophy. To an engineer: specifications, tolerances, stress, calculations, materials, science considerations, design optimization principles. Irrelevant: how to operate the vehicle, assumed knowledge. Same object, car, different contexts require different structural levels of explanation. Why excess detail corrupts foundation cognitive load. Principle: human attention and working memory are severely limited. Roughly 4 to 7 items can be held in active consciousness simultaneously. When you bury essential structure under non-essential detail, pattern recognition fails, signal drowns in noise, cognitive resources exhaust before comprehension occurs, foundation never solidifies, too much to process, learner gives up in confusion. Example: teaching fire safety, corrupted with excess detail. The phenomenon of rapid oxidation, first systematically studied by Lavoisier in 1783 through experimentation involving the role of oxygen in exothermic reactions, demonstrates that combustion processes, which involve the breaking of molecular bonds in fuel sources and their recombination with atmospheric oxygen molecules, approximately 21% of Earth's atmosphere at sea level, release thermal energy quantifiable in joules per mole, which when transferred to biological tissue causes protein denaturation and cellular necrosis, commonly understood as burns, which are medically categorized into first, second, and third-degree classifications based on depth of tissue damage. Clean foundation. Fire is hot. Touch it and you get burned. Don't touch fire. The second version transmits the essential structure immediately. The first buries it. Once the foundation is solid, fire, danger. Then you can add detail. How fire works, chemistry. Types of burns, medical. Fire safety protocols, practical. Historical development of fire understanding. Context. Rule. Build foundation first. Add detail only after base is unshakable. Structural clarity. The compression test. Good structure can be compressed to its essence without losing meaning. Test. Can you state the core idea in one sentence? If yes, structure is clear. Details can be added systematically. If no, structure is muddled. Simplify before proceeding. Examples. Evolution. Organisms with advantageous traits reproduce more successfully, passing those traits to offspring. Supply and demand. When supply increases relative to demand, price falls. When demand increases relative to supply, price rises. Each can be elaborated extensively, but the core structure is compressible. If you can't compress it, you don't understand it clearly enough to teach it. Part 3. Argument. What an argument is. An argument is a structured sequence of claims designed to demonstrate that a conclusion follows necessarily or probably from established premises. 3 essential components. 1. Claim, the assertion being made. 2. Proof, the step-by-step demonstration connecting premises to conclusion. 3. Conclusion, what has been established by the argument. Not every assertion is an argument. It's raining. Observation, claim. It's raining because clouds are releasing accumulated water vapor. Argument, claim, plus explanation. The 3 components in detail. 1. Claim, the assertion. A claim is a statement that can be evaluated as true or false. Valid claims are specific. Water boils at 100 degrees Celsius at sea level. Not water gets hot. Testable. If I drop this rock, it will fall. Not souls exist in another dimension. Clear. All mammals have hair. Not mammals have mammal-like properties. Invalid claims include questions. Is it raining? Interrogative, not assertive. Commands. Close the door. Imperative, not propositional. Expressions. Ouch. Exclamation, not claim. Gibberish. Blarg flimsy snork. Incoherent. Properties of strong claims. Precision, avoid vagueness. Falsifiability, can be tested. Relevance, connected to the argument's purpose. 2. Proof, the step-by-step algorithm. Proof is the logical demonstration that connects premises to conclusions through valid inference. Structure of proof. Step 1. Establish premise, A, with justification. Step 2. Establish premise B, with justification. Step 3. Show logical relationship between A and B. Step 4. Derive intermediate conclusion, C from A plus B. Step 5. Apply C to reach final conclusion. Each step must follow logically from previous steps. No leaps. Be independently verifiable. No just trust me. Use only established premises or proven intermediate conclusions. No hidden assumptions. Maintain consistency. No contradictions. Example. Valid proof structure. Premise. 1. All humans are mortal. Empirically established. Premise 2. Socrates is a human. Empirically established. Inference. Rule. If all X are Y and Z is X, then Z is Y. Logical structure. Application. All humans are mortal, plus Socrates is human conclusion. Therefore, Socrates is mortal. Each step is explicit. No leaps. Conclusion follows necessarily from premises. Example. Invalid proof. Contains logical leap. Premise. 1. Birds can fly. Premise 2. Penguins are birds leap. Therefore, penguins can fly. Problem: Premise 1 is overgeneralized. Not all birds fly. Conclusion doesn't follow. This is an invalid argument even though it's structured like a valid one. 3. Conclusion: What has been established? The conclusion is what the argument has successfully demonstrated, given the premises and proof. Valid conclusions follow necessarily deductive or probably inductive from premises. Contain no information not derivable from the argument, are only as strong as the weakest premise. Invalid conclusions assert more than the proof establishes. Overreach. Introduce new claims not derived from premises. Non sequitur. Ignore contradictory evidence. Cherry-picking. Assume what they're trying to prove. Circular reasoning. Example of overreaching conclusion. Premise: some politicians are corrupt. Proof: examples of corrupt politicians. Invalid conclusion: therefore all politicians are corrupt. Valid conclusion: therefore, corruption exists among politicians. The second conclusion is justified by the premises. The first is not. Types of logical inference. Deductive reasoning. Certainty. Structure: if premises are true, conclusion must be true. Example: all mammals have hair. Whales are mammals. Therefore, whales have hair. If the premises are true, the conclusion is guaranteed. This is the gold standard of logical certainty, used in mathematics, formal logic, proofs, inductive reasoning, probability. Structure: if premises are true, conclusion is likely true, but not certain. Example: the sun has risen every day in recorded history. Therefore, the sun will probably rise tomorrow. The conclusion is highly probable but not logically necessary. The sun could theoretically explode tonight. Used in science, empirical research, everyday reasoning, abductive reasoning. Best explanation. Structure: given observations, what is the most likely explanation? Example: observation: the grass is wet. Possible explanations: rain, sprinkler, morning dew, flood. Best explanation, given context. It probably rained. Abductive reasoning selects the most plausible explanation from multiple possibilities, used in medical diagnosis, detective work, troubleshooting, scientific hypothesis formation, critical distinction. Each type has different strength. Don't confuse inductive probability with deductive certainty. Part 4. Common logical fallacies. What fallacies are errors in reasoning that make arguments invalid, even if they superficially appear convincing. Recognizing fallacies is essential for evaluating others' arguments critically, avoiding errors in your own reasoning, not being manipulated by bad logic. Formal fallacies, errors in logical structure. 1. Affirming the consequent structure. If P, then QQ is true, therefore P is true. Example: if it's raining, the streets are wet, the streets are wet, therefore it's raining. Problem: the streets could be wet for other reasons, sprinklers, flood, etc. The conclusion doesn't follow. Valid form: modus ponens: if it's raining, the streets are wet, it's raining, therefore the streets are wet. 2. Denying the antecedent structure. If P, then QP is false, therefore Q is false. Example: if I study, I'll pass the test I didn't study, therefore I won't pass the test. Problem: you might pass for other reasons, lucky guessing, easy test, prior knowledge. The conclusion doesn't necessarily follow. Valid form: modus tollens: if I study, I'll pass the test. I didn't pass the test, therefore I didn't study or something else went wrong. Informal fallacies, errors in content relevance. 3. Ad hominem: attacking the person. Structure: attacking the person, making the argument instead of addressing the argument itself. Example: Person A: climate change is supported by scientific evidence. Person B: you're a hypocrite who drives an SUV, so your argument is invalid. Problem: the validity of the climate change argument is independent of Person A's personal behavior. Even hypocrites can make valid arguments. When person attacks are relevant, when evaluating credibility of testimony or expertise, e.g., this doctor isn't licensed and has been convicted of fraud. 4. Straw man: misrepresenting the argument. Structure: distorting someone's position into a weaker, easier to attack version. Example: Person A: We should have some regulation of the financial industry. Person B, my opponent wants total government control of the economy. Problem. Person B attacks a position. Person A never held. This is intellectually dishonest. How to avoid steelman. Instead, represent the opponent's argument in its strongest form before critiquing it. 5. Red herring, irrelevant distraction. Structure, introducing an irrelevant topic to divert attention from the actual argument. Example. Debate topic. Should we increase education funding? Response. What about the national debt? We need to address that first. Problem. National debt might be important, but it's a separate issue. This deflects from the education funding question without addressing it. 6. Appeal to authority, inappropriate structure, claiming something is true because an authority figure said so, without providing actual evidence. Example. Einstein believed in God, therefore God exists. Problem. Even brilliant people can be wrong outside their expertise. Einstein's physics expertise doesn't make his theological beliefs authoritative. When appeals to authority are valid, when citing relevant experts in their field with consensus support, physicists agree on relativity, is reasonable. This one physicist thinks relativity is wrong, is not. 7. Appeal to emotion structure, manipulating emotions instead of providing logical argument. Example. If you don't support this policy, you must hate children, shock freedom, soccer America. Problem. Emotional manipulation doesn't establish truth. A policy can feel good and still be ineffective or harmful. Legitimate emotional appeals. When emotion is relevant to the argument, e.g., discussing ethics requires considering suffering, well-being. 8. False dichotomy, false dilemma. Structure. Presenting only two options when more exist. Example. Either you support my policy completely or you're against solving the problem. Problem. Reality usually has multiple options. Binary thinking obscures nuance and alternative solutions. Example. You're either with us or against us. Reality. Someone might be partially with you, neutral, or have a completely different perspective. 9. Circular reasoning, begging the question. Structure. The conclusion is hidden in the premises, assumes what it's trying to prove. Example. The Bible is true because it says so in the Bible. Problem. This doesn't prove anything. It just restates the claim as its own justification. Another example. I'm trustworthy because I'm telling you the truth, and you should believe me because I'm trustworthy. 10. Slippery slope structure, claiming that one event will inevitably lead to extreme consequences without justification. Example. If we allow gay marriage, next people will marry animals, then inanimate objects, then society will collapse. Problem. No logical necessity connects these steps. Each would require separate justification. When slippery slopes are valid, when there's actual causal mechanism, e.g., if you stop paying rent, you'll eventually be evicted. Direct causal chain. 11. Post hoc ergo propter hoc. False cause. Structure assuming that because B followed A caused B, full Latin, post hoc ergo propter hoc. After this, therefore, because of this. Example, I wore my lucky socks and won the game, therefore the socks caused the victory. Problem. Temporal sequence doesn't prove causation. Coincidence exists. Another example, crime dropped after we elected the new mayor, therefore the mayor reduced crime. Problem. Crime might have dropped due to economic factors, demographic shifts, or other causes unrelated to the mayor. 12. Appeal to ignorance, argument from ignorance. Structure. Claiming something is true because it hasn't been proven false, or vice versa. Example. No one has proven God doesn't exist, therefore, God exists. Problem. Lack of disproof doesn't constitute proof. The burden is on the person making the positive claim. Reverse example. No one has proven aliens exist, therefore they don't exist. Problem. Absence of evidence isn't evidence of absence, though it can be weak evidence against depending on context. 13. Hasty generalization structure, drawing broad conclusions from insufficient evidence. Example. I met two rude people from that country. therefore everyone from that country is rude. Problem: sample size too small. Anecdote isn't data. Another example: my grandfather smoked and lived to 90, therefore smoking is safe. Problem: one counterexample doesn't invalidate statistical trends. 14. Cherry-picking, selective evidence. Structure: highlighting evidence that supports your position while ignoring contradictory evidence. Example: this study shows vaccines cause harm, ignoring hundreds of studies showing safety and efficacy. Problem: intellectual honesty requires addressing all relevant evidence, not just evidence supporting your preferred conclusion. 15. Equivocation structure, using the same word with different meanings in different parts of the argument. Example: evolution is just a theory. Theories are unproven speculation, therefore evolution is unproven speculation. Problem: theory in science means well-tested explanation, like germ theory or gravitational theory, not wild guess. The argument equivocates between two definitions. 16. Composition fallacy structure, assuming what's true of parts is true of the whole. Example: every player on the team is excellent, therefore the team is excellent. Problem: team performance depends on coordination, not just individual skill. A team of stars might play poorly together. 17. Division fallacy. Structure: assuming what's true of the whole is true of all parts. Example: this car is heavy, therefore every component of the car is heavy. Problem: individual parts might be lightweight, it's the aggregate that's heavy. 18. No true Scotsman structure, defending a generalization by arbitrarily excluding counterexamples. Example: person A: no Scotsman puts sugar on porridge. Person B: my uncle is Scottish and puts sugar on porridge. Person A: well, no true Scotsman puts sugar on porridge. Problem: redefining terms to exclude inconvenient evidence is intellectually dishonest. Modern example: real Christians don't commit violence. Christian commits violence. Well, they weren't a real Christian. 19.2 Quoque appeal to hypocrisy. Structure: dismissing an argument because the person making it doesn't follow their own advice. Example: you say I should quit smoking, but you smoke too, so your argument is invalid. Problem: the health dangers of smoking are independent of whether the person warning you also smokes. Hypocrites can make valid arguments. 20. Burden of proof. Fallacy structure, claiming the burden of proof lies with the person questioning a claim rather than the person making it. Example: telepathy exists, prove it doesn't. Problem: the person making the positive claim, telepathy exists, bears the burden of providing evidence. You don't have to disprove unfalsifiable claims. 21. The fallacy structure. Assuming that because an argument contains a fallacy, the conclusion must be false. Example: person A: you should exercise ad hominem attack on lazy people. Person B: that's ad hominem, therefore exercise isn't beneficial. Problem: exercise can be beneficial even though person A made a logical error. Bad argument doesn't automatically mean false conclusion, it just means the argument doesn't prove the conclusion. 22. Category error, type mismatch. Structure: treating something as if it belongs to a different logical category than it actually does. Example: what color is Tuesday? Problem: days of the week don't have colors. Color doesn't apply to temporal categories. This is a category error. Another example: how much does liberty weigh? Problem: abstract concepts don't have physical mass. You're applying a physical property, weight, to a non-physical category, political concept. In arguments, logic is cold and unfeeling, unlike human emotions. Problem: cold and unfeeling are emotional descriptors being applied to a methodological framework. Category error: logic isn't in the emotional category. Part 5. How to build and evaluate arguments. Building valid arguments checklist. Step 1. Clarify your claim. What exactly are you asserting? Is it specific and testable? Is it relevant to the discussion? Step 2. Gather evidence. What empirical data supports this claim? Is the evidence reliable? Have you considered contradictory evidence? Step 3. Structure your proof. What are your premises? What logical inferences connect premises to conclusion? Are there any hidden assumptions? Does each step follow from previous steps? Step 4. Derive your conclusion. Does the conclusion follow necessarily, deductive, or probably inductive? Have you avoided overreaching? Is the conclusion as strong as your weakest premise? Step 5. Test for fallacies. Does the argument commit any of the fallacies listed above? Are there any logical leaps? Is the reasoning sound throughout? Evaluating others' arguments. Checklist. Structural test. Are the premises clearly stated? Is the logical structure explicit? Does each step follow from previous steps? Is the conclusion actually derived, not assumed? Empirical test. Are the premises true? Match observable reality. Can the claims be verified? Is contradictory evidence addressed? Are the sources reliable? Logical test. Are there hidden assumptions? Does the argument contain fallacies? Is the reasoning valid? Is the conclusion proportional to the evidence? If an argument fails any test, it fails completely. Though the conclusion might still be true, you just need a better argument. The Steelman principle: straw man, intellectually dishonest, misrepresent your opponent's argument to make it easier to attack. Steelman, intellectually honest, represent your opponent's argument in its strongest possible form before critiquing it. Why Steelman? 1. Forces you to genuinely understand the opposing view. 2. Prevents you from attacking positions no one actually holds. 3. Makes your critique more convincing. If you beat the strong version, you've actually accomplished something. 4. Builds intellectual credibility and trust. Example: strawman approach. Opponent: we should consider some gun regulations. Your strawman: my opponent wants to ban all guns and repeal the Second Amendment. Steelman approach. Opponent: we should consider some gun regulations. Your steelman: my opponent argues that certain regulations, such as background checks and waiting periods, might reduce gun violence while preserving Second Amendment rights. Now, here's why I think that approach faces these specific challenges. The second approach actually engages the argument. The first just attacks a caricature. Part 6. Integration. Putting it all together. The complete framework. To establish knowledge: 1. Make a clear claim. Assert something specific about reality. 2. Ensure rhetorical coherence. Articulate it clearly and consistently. 3. Provide empirical grounding. Connect it to observable reality. 4. Construct logical proof. Step-by-step demonstration from premises to conclusion. 5. Derive conclusion. Establish what follows from the argument. 6. Test rigorously. Check for structural soundness, empirical validity, logical fallacies. If any step fails, you haven't established knowledge, you have speculation, opinion, error, or noise. Why this matters? In personal thinking, prevents self-deception, enables learning from mistakes, builds reliable knowledge base, improves decision-making and communication, facilitates productive disagreement, enables knowledge transfer, prevents manipulation by bad arguments, builds shared understanding. In society, enables scientific progress, improves policy debates, resists propaganda and misinformation, preserves intellectual standards, the eternal test. Any claim, any argument, any idea must survive. 1. The coherence test. Can it be articulated clearly? 2. The consistency test. Does it contradict itself? 3. The evidence test. Does it match observable reality? 4. The logical test. Does the reasoning hold? 5. The falsifiability test. Could evidence potentially disprove it? 6. The fallacy test. Does it commit reasoning errors? Pass all 6. You have valid knowledge. Fail anyone. Back to the drawing board. Conclusion. Think clearly or get fucked. Reality doesn't care about your feelings, your preferences, or your cherished beliefs. Reality has structure. Logic is the method for accessing that structure. Arguments are the vehicles for transmitting knowledge about that structure. Master these, and you can distinguish truth from bullshit. Build reliable knowledge. Avoid manipulation. Make better decisions. Actually understand reality instead of stumbling through it. Ignore these, and you'll believe comfortable lies, fall for bad arguments, make preventable mistakes, be exploited by people who understand logic better than you. Die ignorant, your choice, but choose wisely, because reality will test your conclusions whether you're ready or not, and reality's tests are pass, fail. No partial credit, no appeals. Think clearly, build solid arguments, test rigorously, or get intellectually destroyed by a universe that operates on logic whether you acknowledge it or not. Now go forth and argue better, you beautiful logical bastard.